Hi, Chaz. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm fine, Ethan. Very well, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for joining me as well. You've had a very successful music career with the Blockheads and a solo career, and even with film scores, which we'll get into later. But what is your earliest musical memory?
I'm well picking up playing some notes on a piano when I was about 5 years old. My parents had rented a piano that my brother Tony, who's 2 years older, they'd rented it for him, but he wasn't very interested. And apparently I was. I sort of plunked a few notes. And then they bought me a guitar when I was seven, a little Spanish guitar, and that was the beginning of my playing guitar. And then they got a piano, and I played piano and guitar basically right up until today. In fact, I played the piano this morning. So yeah, um, 68 years later, I'm still doing it. Yeah.
That's brilliant. That have you been writing this morning then, or just playing?
What was I doing? I was um so I've recently bought a really nice piano, an upright piano. It's called a Pleyel, Pleyel. It's a French piano. And apparently, who was it was it Debussy? Something like that. Like some really great classical pianists. No, it was Chopin. Chopin. I know it sounds incredible, but he actually helped design one of these pianos. It's one of the oldest piano makers in the world. I've never seen one in England. And I went up to Oxford to buy a piano. I wanted to buy a Yamaha, but then something caught my eye. This player, which I'd only ever seen in France in a couple of shop windows. And so I thought I'll give it a go. I sat down. It sounds magical. So it's actually really been great because it's reinvigorated me, playing the piano and just compositionally. I'm excited. You know what it's like. I mean, what have you bought recently that's new that's fired you up? There must be something.
Oh, I can't think of anything really. But do you get that with a new instrument that it helps you what creatively?
Yeah, I mean, did you get do you use an electric toothbrush or anything like that, or is there anything
Yeah,
up?
like
Yeah.
yeah, toothbrush. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I don't know. You know how certain things can really vibe you up, like or it could just be going out for a walk, like you get excited and you feel positive about the future. That's what it's done. It's allowed me to feel excited, harnessed my energy to look positively musically into the future. So it's great. I was actually trying to find this little jazz lick, piano jazz lick that I had. I thought I had it on my phone. I don't have it, so I was going to try and learn that, but I couldn't find it. I've got it somewhere, but I've still got to find that link. So I just sat at the piano, played a few chords, and that was it, really. And I thought, oh, I better get on with my yoga stretching because I'm going to be speaking to you soon. And that was my morning.
With music, obviously, you've had a very successful career, like we said. When did you know you could do it as a career?
um, hmm. It took a while because financial stability took a while to find that. My dad very generously gave my sister and my brother lent us cars when we were 17 because he had a garage. That really helped us sort of like, go to places and come back from places that normally other people of that age couldn't do. So, for example, when I met Ian Dury, I had a car. I could drop him off after a rehearsal. I could drop him off after a gig. You know, that's really helpful. I mean, people talk about learning your scales and learning to read music and etc. When you're a young musician, I'd advise them to get a car because as soon as possible, because that then you're in a band. Like the bloke who doesn't have a car, he always has to be dropped off after at 2 o'clock in the morning, which doesn't go down too well. People never say anything, but you know, the musician who's dropped him off might be gritting his teeth on the way home.
You're the
Um,
last one to get home.
yeah.
Were you the designated driver then to and from gigs in the early days then?
Well, one of them, because if you've got five blokes in a band, and it all depends who lives where. So if you live anywhere within a sort of probably a 5 mile radius, or of another musician or singer who doesn't drive, yes, you're designated. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Ian Dury. You first joined the Kilburns. What were those early days like?
It was good. It was very energized. I mean, when I look back on that late 70s period, it was quite zany, a bit chaotic at times. I think the music, you know, it was very energized. The music was very energized. I have to give it that. But I kind of was looking, also wanted something a bit more soulful, and my interests musically were not only English, but they were also American, particularly Afro American. I really liked soul, and so I tried to get into that idea of maybe, well, that happened when I started writing with them. I said, I'd been with the Kilburns for about 8 or 9 months. It was all going well. It was kind of zany rockabilly, sort of pub rock group, like sort of sound. And I said, listen, do you fancy writing some songs? And he said, yeah. And so, I mean, when I first met him and I got the gig, I just had a Wurlitzer electric piano. But then as time went by, I sort of brought out my guitar, and he's heard me playing a few funky chops. And so when I said, do you want to write some songs? Yeah, he went, yeah, brilliant, love to do that. So he disbanded the group. Well, didn't disband, he just stopped doing so many gigs, and he went into writing mode. And one of the first songs we wrote was Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll. And that was a big indie hit. And then one thing led to another, actually. That's what happened.
How long before you were writing with Ian were you writing songs yourself?
Woo. I think I started in my teens, actually. Yeah, I did. I was in a band called Byzantium when I left school. When I left school, I went to art school. I went to St. Martin's. And I had an equal love of art as I do today. I do quite a lot of pictures, but um, I didn't have the imagination to know what I could do with my art. So even though I went to a great college and I was offered a place to do graphics, I thought, what am I going to end up doing? Doing, illustrations in books. And so even though it was a great place, I turned it down. And then I had three, and I had some gigs with Byzantium, the band I was in, and we had the same management as the Faces management, and we got 3 gigs supporting the Faces. The problem was that was it. There was nothing more after that, and I think I went back to working in a greengrocers after that, and then I delivered pharmaceuticals all over London. Got hopelessly lost. One thing sort of led to another. My parents were very, very supportive, but then I got to about the age of 22, 23. I was still at home quite late, really. And they said, what are you doing with your life? And I said, I don't know. I was, smoking too many jazz woodbines as well. That didn't help. And the acronym. Anyway, yeah. So they said, well, why don't you get a job in as a management trainee? So for this terrible 9 months, I went to John Lewis in Oxford Street, worked in the lighting department, and it was a laugh. It was it kind of a sort of homosexual kind of percentage high, sort of gay kind of quota, and that was always being fun. It was funny. It was like an episode of Are You Being Served? Actually, a lot of it. And then so then my mother, one night I came out and she could see I was absolutely grey, and I was just she knew it wasn't the life for me, and so she took pity, and I started playing gigs with another guy I'd been playing with, Jonathan Kelly. So this was after months of being at John Lewis. That ended that period came to an end. I did odd jobs, still writing, still living at home with my parents, and then I got an audition with Ian. I went down to see them at the Greyhound in Fulham Road. It's a pub, and that's when I saw the Kilburns performing. And as I say, they were kind of zany. It was like something out of surreal movie. Ian had a Tommy Cooper fez on his head. The sax player looked like Frank Zappa, and it was nuts. It was pretty nutty, but it was loud. And Ian was like, you hypnotic. I mean, like, you couldn't take your eyes off him. So after the gig, I just jumped up onto stage, after they finished playing, and I started trying to go down the passageway that led from the stage to the dressing room, and I was stopped by the roadie. He said, "Here, mate, if you want to see the band, go around the front way." So I hopped up the stage, went through the door next to the stage, followed my nose towards the dressing room, and I could just see this steamy affair of people taking their shirts off, and one person had his eye on me. He was sitting down, and as I was approaching the room, he said, "Here, mate, do I know you?" Well, fuck off then. I don't know if you need to edit that. I don't know who's listening to this, but yeah, it could be F off if you need to edit.
No, no, it's fine. It's fine.
Okay, so back on with fuck off. He goes, and I'm standing there, and I think, oh, now, oh, bloody hell, what do I do now? I really, and all eyes are on me in the dressing room. So I turn around, and on my way out, Ed Spate, who had called me the previous night and said, "Hey, why don't you come down?" Like he'd because I'd given sorry, I'm telling it the wrong way round, but 2 days earlier I'd been in Maurice Plaquet before this gig, and I'd bought a Wurlitzer electric piano, and I'd left my telephone number, and Ed Spate from the Kilburns goes into the shop and says, "Oh, our keyboard player's just left." And the manager of the shop says, "Oh, this chap just came in and left his number." That's how I got the call. I got a call from Ed Spate, and so that's why I'd gone to the gig. He told me, "Come down to the Greyhound pub," which I did. So there I was, standing in the dressing room, just being told to fuck off, and I didn't quite know what to do. I spun round, and Ed Spate goes, "Oh, hold on, mate." He said, "Are you Chaz?" And I went, "Yeah." He went, "Nice to meet you." He said, "We've got a rehearsal tomorrow. Do you want to come down?" I went, "Yeah, all right." I wasn't quite sure what to expect, But as luck would have it, I got the gig. I got the gig. So that then I've entered into a sort of, like, I suppose, about a 9-month period of playing with the Kilburns, and that's when, after that, even though we played loads of pubs and so forth, Ian was the king of the pub circuit, I would say, in the South. But I think he was tired of it. I think he felt he needed a break. He wanted to change, and enter Chaz Jankel. And I helped him. Maybe forge a slightly different direction. Actually,
Was that an exciting time then, starting the Blockheads and writing these new songs and getting out there and playing and stuff?
Yeah, yeah. So we Ian and I were writing and rehearsing. Well, when I say rehearsing, we were writing the songs, and to record them, we went to this place called Alvik, which was a little studio in Wimbledon, famous for its tennis. But it also has a famous little rehearsal studio. So we were in there, and Vic, I can't remember whether it was Al or Vic. I still to this day can't remember. It was Al or one of them, Al Vic. Let's call him Vic. Vic says, "I know this great bass player and drummer. Why don't you invite them down?" Because Ian was playing drums, I was playing everything else, but at times it was a little bit shaky, so he could hear it. So he invited down Charlie, Charles, and Norman Watroy, and when we met them, we played with them, and on playback of one of the songs, which was one of the songs that Ian and I had written, called Blockheads, we're sitting in the control room, this little control room, and Charlie Charles has got Ian's lyric in his hand, and he's reading it as the music's going, and it goes, "You must have seen parties of blockheads with shoes like dead pigs' noses." And he looks down at his footwear, and he goes, "Ian, that's me." And Norman goes, "Yeah." He said, "We're the Blockheads," and high fives all round. And the name of the lyric then now becomes the name of the band. And we went on to record New Boots and Panties, which is our big album, really. And after that, Ian's management and the record label, Stiff Records, said, "Listen, will you go on tour? We need you to go on tour to promote it." And we said, well, Ian asked Charlie Norman, "Will you come?" And they said, "Only if we can bring the guys in our band," because they'd been playing in a band called Loving Awareness for many years, but things have gone a bit quiet. That's why Charlie and Norman were renting themselves out as session musicians. This is how we met them. Anyway, so we said, yeah, obviously they came. So then Johnny Turnbull, the guitar player out of Loving Awareness, and Mickey Gallagher also, they joined the band, and then Ian got hold of Davey Payne, who was a sax player who he'd played in many different configurations in the past before the Kilburns, and so that then became the Blockheads, which I think was pretty much intact for about 19 years, with that personnel. Yeah.
When you were writing songs, you and Ian, how would it work? Would you write the music and he'd write the lyrics to that, or would you write the music to his lyrics?
To start with, it was him writing lyrics and me adding music, but then it changed as he trusted me more. I would then, offer up musical ideas, like "Wake Up," for example, which is the first song on New Boots and Panties. It's just basically a groove, and I seem to remember, and then so his words would sit on top of a groove, but if you go back to kind of rockabilly and things like that, it didn't start with the groove. The groove came from like a 12 bar chord sequence. That's, so it all depended what speed you wanted to play that at. You know what I mean? Or you know what I mean? There's always were certain chords involved, very simple, and it gave a kind of a transport system for the music. Well, when you listen to sort of funk or soul, it's not always like that. Or even if you listen to the African music, it's kind of the rhythm propels everything, and melody is almost like not an afterthought, but it's certainly a lot more earthed in that respect. And I kind of really got into that via Sly and the Family Stone. When I was in my late teens, I found soul, and I found it, my spiritual home in a way. I felt it was really, yeah, man, I like this. What's that? That's a backbeat. Love that. We'll have some of that, I used to love that. And so that was the kind of feeling that groove was something I could bring to the party with Ian. And not only that, Charlie and Norman, but they were the bass player, the drummer and bass player now in the Blockheads. They loved, as did the other guys, American oriented music, not only funk, like the band and more, and it could stretch as far as, Bob Dylan but music beyond these shores is what I'm saying. We loved the Who, we loved the Small Faces, and that kind of thing, and more blues, those kind of artists. But we were looking beyond, yeah.
Were there not many other bands doing that at the time then?
None. No, I can't think of any actually. I think there was a London band called Shack Attack. Oh, and obviously you've got the Average White Band. They were, they definitely were tapping into big time into the James Brown territory of things. But not only were we doing that, Ian had a love of music hall, kind of like Max Wall and I don't know, people from an earlier era who were very theatrical, because Ian was very theatrical. As much as all this stuff I'm talking about here, Ian loved music hall, Oscar Wilde. He loved a witty lyric, and he liked the humor. So that humor, was integral to Ian as well, and that was all part and parcel of what was to become Ian Dury and the Blockheads. That our signature sound. I mean, even to this day, we play steaming funky tunes, and then we go into a sort of like a song like Billy Ricky Dicky, which is like about this cheeky chappy over kind of it's not umpa, but it's a kind of dung 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 dung. You know what I mean? It's kind of there ain't no, there's very little kind of reference to sort of any sort of Afro-Americanism in there. It's not that at all. But the audience, what I've discovered in 45 years of playing live, they don't, if it's a good song, it's a good song. They don't say, oh no, I don't listen to that. You know, they roll with it. I mean, they might prefer one song to another, but you know, after all these years, that's what I've realized, that you know, I don't know if you've realized in your life, people love all kinds of music, you know, as long as it's authentic, I think.
Yeah, especially when you get older as well, you appreciate more music, don't you?
Yeah. Because if you were just to listen to one thing over and over and over again, it'd get boring, wouldn't it? I think
Yeah,
you'd get
exactly. Yeah.
tired of it. It's a bit like, say you've had a sausage roll or even a vegan sausage roll, right? I mean, a few hours later, you don't want another one of them. You want something sweet, maybe, or a bit of fruit, you know. So I
Yeah,
think,
exactly.
or even a Kit Kat or something like that. You know, you want something to counterbalance, and then you've had that, and a few hours later, oh, I want something savory. So we always want, you know, a change. We want these changes, I think. Anyway, that and and so as I say, we've got three generations of fans coming to our gigs now. But anyway, that you know, I'm talking loads about the Blockheads, and but alongside all of that, Ethan, you know, I've always loved making instrumental music. You know, like and I think in my early, well, mid 20s, a friend of mine, um, was, you know, helped me find a piece of music I'd seen actually on a video. I had a video of, and it was a recital of Chopin uh, playing what turned out to be Fantasy Impromptu in C sharp minor by Chopin. And that then, when I found out what that was, then I was really, because you know, I thought, wow, this is so beautiful. And I think I started writing my own sort of variations on classical, I would say romantic pieces. Not the da 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 da, not all that, but the more kind of flowing, you know, sort of pieces which were more like the equivalent of water to me, I would say. And I've always been loved that kind of that end of classical music. You know, I find it very relaxing. Kind of, it's a bit, you know, like you can breathe out with it. It's nothing uptight about it. And and so many years later, well, it was about in 1986, my sister Annabelle was co-directing a movie called D.O.A, Dead on Arrival. It was a remake of a film noir, and it had Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan starring in it. And it was being released by Touchstone, part of Disney, the corporation at the time. And Annabelle asked me to do the score. And I went out to LA, which was where she was living, and I wrote the score for the movie. Now, the CD, there was a CD made, or there's a company that put out the soundtrack, which was available for about a year. But then they went bust, and you couldn't get the music anywhere. And about a year ago, my wife Elaine said, "I love that music you did for D.O.A." Excuse me, Ethan. Where can you get it? And we couldn't get anywhere. I'm just going to get some water. And so we decided to put a CD together, an album length of the music, the original music of D.O.A. And that's what we've done. But I also put a piano sonata, which kind of put all the themes together, the main themes in the music, and I rolled them into one piece. And so that's one of the pieces on the album. Yeah.
What was it like going back to it and doing it again?
It was wonderful. It was really great. I mean, when I recorded it, um, you know, I think a 19-piece string section Like they were all top LA, probably orchestral players. And they gave me a little clap after they'd recorded the theme actually in the studio. And the conductor, tapped his baton on his music stand, and they all gave me a little polite clap. So I'd done well. I think, wow, that's good. They liked it, and I loved it. It was it's a very. I think it's one of my better pieces, one of my better ones. Yeah, yeah. So it feels good to be revisiting it, and there's a possibility I might perform it at some point because I've made another album recently, which I haven't released yet, called Notes of Bergamot, and that's with a cellist. And once again, it's kind of, I suppose, continuing this instrumental, quite what's the word? Impressionistic. I would say impressionistic. So it, there's no hard edges on it, but I think it's a great album. This Notes of Bergamot. And I think we could include, if we played live, I think we could include the D.O.A. Dead on Arrival theme, and it might be very interesting to strip it back down to sort of cello and piano. I think it could really work. So, yeah, Ethan, watch out. You never know at a theatre near you in Leeds. We might be hearing.
It sounds good. But what was it like writing the score back in the 80s?
It was a huge. It was wonderful. It was wonderful because I mean, how many times does any composer or writer get the chance to work with, a 19-piece orchestra? There's a lot of moves take place. For starters, you've got to have it scored, you know. And I had somebody who helped me write it out because my physical writing is very bad, So he helped me orchestrate it. And also there's cues on the album if you listen where I'm playing guitar as well. So I was using both skills actually, both my but mainly it's more orchestral. But there is the odd sort of kind of rock guitar that comes in, which didn't please Jeff Katzenberg, who was the boss of Touchstone movies. I remember, we had a preview of the film, and we all drove out to the burbs in LA. He showed the movie, and afterward, it's the first time he'd even heard. He said, "Hey, Jack," he was assistant. He said, "What's that thing going?" Jeff, that's electric guitar. Well, I don't like it, So we had to go back and sort of and modify it slightly, but it was still there. So to this day, I'm not quite sure whether it was a successful, or not, that aspect of it. That was just how I interpreted this music at the time. But it was a momentous time as a musician for me.
You've done other film scores. Is this something you enjoy then, doing these film scores?
Yeah, I do. I mean, if the story is good, sometimes you can get messed around by doing, you do a piece and then they want you to do something else and they're not happy with that. To be honest, at the end of the day, I like to be my own boss. I like to, write my own music, and I do prefer that in a way. But at the same time, it's wonderful writing music for a movie because, in a way, I suppose what I'm known best for and what I do love doing a lot of songwriting. Well, when you write a song, obviously you've got a lyric, and then you put the appropriate music to that lyric. With a movie, your lyric is the dialogue. Obviously, sorry to point out an obvious thing, but that's how it works. And then for me, and then you just paint the appropriate music for that dialogue, for the temperature of that scene. Yeah. So that's how it works for me. And I would say it's an equal love. I mean, do I prefer that to songwriting? No, it's just another aspect of being a musician, really.
Well, like we said before, you had a successful solo career, especially in America. What was it like going solo?
Well, to be honest, Ethan, I hate the word solo. In as much as why do people call it solo? I mean, it's almost like it has this feeling of isolation about it. Solo, However, but I suppose it happened because I was associated with the Blockheads, and and I'd got this record deal on my own. So okay, I was making records on my own, and coming back to that time, it was on the back of the royalties I'd earned from "Hit Me with Your Rhythm Stick," and this record deal I'd got with A&M. This was 1980. That allowed me to buy build a studio, a recording studio, and it was there where I recorded most of my 4 albums that came out on A&M. And one of the tunes was called "Glad to Know You," which was on my second album. It was the first tune of my second album, which was called Chaz here, and it was called Questionnaire in America. So I went out. So "Glad to Know You" was released, and it became a massive dance hit in America. And so to this day, most people know me from that, I suppose. There was another song called "Number One," which was in a movie called Mike's Murder. And often I'll get people, messaging me or getting in touch on the internet, say referencing those tunes, "Oh man, that was a big part of my life," or, you know, yeah, no, really nice comments. And so that was a big moment for me. There I am out in America promoting dance music as it was, and it was the early days of dance music, I'd say, because it was 1980. Rave hadn't really kicked in at that point, and if you made club music, really, disco was still a dirty word here. You know, um, it hadn't really reached center stage, so to speak. I mean, yeah. So that kind of style of music I was making wasn't popular here, but it was popular in America, probably because club culture was massive, absolutely massive there. Whereas here it was big, but it was more like ska. You'd hear ska music, or maybe you had Northern Soul. You had these different pockets, but um, they were ahead in terms of dance culture at that point. Yeah.
The Blockheads didn't stick to like one music genre. There's obviously different genres within the music, but did go in. I know you don't like the word, but going solo,
Yeah.
did it still give you more musical freedom?
Yeah, good question. Um, it did really, but yeah. And having said that, I still did continue a lot of the time to use work with Ian as a lyricist. So, even I'm Glad to Know You, Ian wrote the lyrics for that. So I didn't completely disconnect myself, but I had more room to be I suppose, be myself and not have to sort of tailor my music to the requirements of Ian and the Blockheads. And I mean, Ian was really, I think he would come to me a lot of the time. I'd say 80% of the time. And if he had a new lyric, he'd say, "Chaz, come over and have a look at this." Or I might have a piece of music and say, "Hey, Ian, check this out." Um, and and then having done that, then we'd assemble the Blockheads and work out the tunes. Um, as I said, now and again it would be different, where he might consult a fellow Blockhead, and they might write a song. But generally speaking, you know, and I haven't gone into details yet about how specific songs were written, but to answer your question once again, yeah, it was writing on my own. I could do what more or less what the hell I wanted. Yeah, yeah.
You mentioned Ian's lyrics there, and you mentioned it before that some lyrics are humorous, but some are serious.
Mm.
Was that Ian as a character?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was a very intelligent guy, and um, he'd had a hell of a life. I don't know how much you know about Ian. Do you know much about Ian and the Blockheads? And
Yeah, yeah, he had polio and struggles and stuff,
yeah,
didn't he? Yeah, yeah.
so I think a lot of that frustration was evident in his lyrics. Definitely. Um, but Ian was a stoic, and a lot of the time he'd laugh at the irony in life, of his life. He'd be very frustrated with the patronizing attitude of what they would call walkie talkies. So that was the way disabled people would refer to people who were able bodied, was walkie talkies. And yeah, but it was very difficult for a disabled person in that period of time. There were no, for example, there were very few ramps in places outside buildings. It often would be big steps, and Ian, obviously having polio, he'd have to struggle. So I'll give you an example of Ian's stoicism, or his attitude. He said one day we were writing together, and Ian said, "Chaz, did you ever see the movie Zulu?" And I went, "Yeah, Michael Caine. Yeah, I've seen it. It's a great movie." And he said, "Yeah." Well, he said, "You remember that time when you can't see them, but Michael Caine is sort of like on one side of a mountain, a big hill, and all he can hear, and things aren't looking good because there's the Zulu nation on the other side of the hill, and they're all beating their shields with their spears, going hoo 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 hoo." And he said, "You know what?" I went, "What?" He said, "That's rhythm. That's rhythm for me." I went, "Oh, right." So, so rhythm for him was defiance, the energy of defiance.
Well, you
And
don't see many like musicians with a disability, really, do you? So, did people look up to like the disabled creator kind of look up to in the music world, if that makes sense?
they do, yeah, that's true. Sorry, what was your question?
Like, if a disabled person wanted to be a musician, would they look up to Ian? Because there's not many
Definitely.
others really that.
No, you're absolutely right. Absolutely. I mean, there's a brilliant, phenomenal disabled theatre group called Grey Eye, Graeae. The spelling doesn't help, but it's called Grey Eye. They're genius. They put on a production of Reasons to Be Cheerful a few years ago, and it was stunning. If ever they bring it out again, you've got to go and see it. And it tells a tale of two guys trying to get to an Ian Dury gig, and and it's really spirited and yeah. So um, John Kelly, uh, he's in a wheelchair, and but he doesn't. He's got an extraordinary attitude to life. He's very upbeat, um, not negative for a second, but obviously frustrated about the fact that allowances are taken away, uh, about what you've just mentioned, that disabled people are often seen as, they're not seen as much in the media. Um, that's the way it is at the moment. But they Ian is seen as an icon of positivity, and yeah, he is. They love him. Like Ian's a great. He's very. He's a source of encouragement. Big source of encouragement.
Yeah, definitely. Would you see the influence the Blockheads had on music over the years? Because I remember when I first heard Reasons to Be Cheerful, and it were a British man rapping in the 70s. It's like bizarre thinking, looking back, but did you notice how you influenced uh, other bands?
Um, have I noticed the influence in other bands? Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
like,
so.
could you hear the Blockheads in future bands?
Oh yeah, and Madness openly admitted that
Yeah.
they were influenced by Ian. They acknowledged that. Um, my thing was this, I mean, living in England, even though I loved, really funky beats, there was no point me getting an American soul singer because I lived in England, right? And Ian very wisely stuck to being English, and that's what gives it gives it its authenticity. Yeah. Um, I don't know. It feels very natural to me now. The way it all sort of works together. Um, I think we have influenced other bands. I think generally speaking, bands tend to find other influences. I don't think it's as large um, as you might think it is. I think it's um, I don't know. What do you think? What's your thought? Do you think we have influenced a lot of bands?
Yeah, I would say so. And even like I said with Madness, if
Yeah,
somebody gets influenced by Madness, then it's going to go back to the Blockheads, isn't it? If they influence, do you know what I'm saying?
I hear what you're saying, Ethan. And actually, interesting enough, you made me think about something. So Ian was really into jazz, and he was 10 years older than me. If he was alive today, he'd be 82. Now, being 10 years younger, being 10 years older than me, meant he tapped into the whole like jazz scene happening in America, like the bebop and all and that. And he turned me on to that sort of music. Um, and I would say that music was rebel music back then. It was like it never tried to be pop, never tried to be pop. And in fact, when I met Ian, he wasn't trying to be pop. He was art school, and he was rebellious and liked to have a laugh, and but it was quite edgy. And I think he saw the equivalent in jazz. That was what he loved in jazz, but it was very sophisticated, and like you had to be a very good musician to play jazz. And he loved that skill um, that was involved. I mean, he was the same with his lyric writing. But that jazz that he loved got woven into the music we made, and a lot of people, I think, who hadn't listened to jazz and thought they never would do, were introduced to it through the Blockheads. And I used to hear people saying to me, "Oh wow, through you, I got into jazz." And so you're right. I think it was a kind of portal. It was a portal to another world that a lot of people hadn't heard before.
Yeah, definitely. With the albums you brought out on your own in the 80s, which is your favourite?
Whoa, bloody hell. Um, Probably Chazanova, because I was glad to know you on there. There was another track called 3 Million Since, which is I was told it was like one of the first electro funk albums, or in fact the kind of vanguard of it. Um, that was also on the 12-inch that was big, the big massive dance track with that. Well, Glad to Know You was on it. I Know Corrida was on it. Um, and 3 Million Since, yeah. So I think that was my favorite. Yeah, yeah, of that period. Yeah.
I think mine's Casablanca, actually.
Is it now?
Yeah.
You held that one back, didn't you?
I really like the song Without You.
Oh my God.
I think
Yeah.
it's a brilliant song, that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Well, I recorded that actually. I'll go tell you a funny anecdote about that. I recorded that in the Bahamas, the actual backing track at Compass Point, which was Chris Blackwell's Island Records. Chris Blackwell used to run it, and he had a studio out there. And I'd been out there once before to make Lord Upminster with Ian, an album called Lord Upminster. You might know Spasticus Autisticus. I don't know if you've ever
Yeah,
heard that.
yeah.
That was on that. So anyway, I liked it there, and to cut long story short, I went back there and recorded my own album, um, Casablanca, and when it got to Without You, I mean, I knew it was pretty funky. And I didn't have a bass player. I brought a drummer over with me, Jamie Lane, and I was playing guitar and keys, but didn't have a bass player. So the house engineer, more like the tape op, he got to play bass on it, and the engineer, like it was a guy, a nutter called Stephen Stanley, great recording engineer, but a bit nuts, very quick. I mean, he could, even when I was there with Ian, he was always one step ahead. He had the patois. He was just like faster than Ian. He would shut Ian down. It was quite funny to watch because he was so, you couldn't get one over him. Anyway, when I'm making my album, Casablanca, one morning I come in and we'd recorded the backing track the day before. without you. And there I go in, and he's in the room on his own, standing and dancing around, and he's got this track blasting through the speakers. Just we hadn't even put the vocal on at that point. And he opens the door that led to a corridor, and he picks up his chair that he sits on. You know how big like the one you're sitting in. He picks it up and hurls it out of the room, not to find, he doesn't find out if there's anybody walking by because everyone passing. And I go, ah, like that. I remember going, ah, like that. And that was the kind of nutter he was, but he was so excited by a good groove, like he couldn't get enough of it. And that was one of my memories of recording Without You.
Yeah, it's got a brilliant groove, and I think that with a lot of your music, like the lyrics and the singing add to it. But even if you took that off, I think they'd still make great tracks with the grooves they've got and the instrumentals.
Yeah. Well, I just was really following my instinct with all of that. I used to love that kind of combination of in a funny sort of way, a bit like Rod Temperton was with Quincy Jones, or with for the Jacksons. I love funk, but I also like that melodic edge as well. So I like mixing up that kind of what is it? Maybe the head, the lyrics and in the harmonies, they're kind of appeal to your head and your heart, and then the rhythms appeal to your body. It's maybe it's that it's some sort of balance between the two. So you have that kind of yin and yang again. That's that kind of sweet and sour thing going on.
What was it like when Quincy Jones covered your song?
Awful. Terrible. No, what a drag that was. No, that was great. My God. Yeah, met the big man himself. Yeah, that was a momentous day. Well, first of all, there were two events. First of all, when I got the call one day. Sorry, it was more like. Hello. Hello. Oh, hello. This is Quincy Jones's secretary. We were wondering if Quincy Jones could record Ai No Corrida. I was in Notting Hill Gate in London at the time, and I went. I nearly fell off my seat. I couldn't believe it. I went, yeah. And okay, so then he recorded it. I was recording mine as well at the time, because that was why A&M had signed me, was on that song, my song Ai No Corrida, and one other song called Am I Honest With Myself Really, which was on the first album, the Chaz Jankel album. On the basis of those two tunes, A&M had signed me. But the thing was, at the same time, as I was recording the original Ai No Corrida, Quincy Quincy was making his last album for A&M. So I'm making my first, he's making his last. And they put his out first, albeit like he'd managed to edit it down to 3 minutes 40 or whatever it was. Mine was 8.5 minutes. So there was no contest really who was gonna who had their eye on the ball. Mine went on forever. No. But funny enough, when I see footage of him doing it live, he really pushes those singers. They go, I know, and another chorus, I know, Karina. I really feel for them. I wish you'd shorten it somewhat, because it goes on forever. But I was very fortunate because Herbie Hancock's playing on it. Louis Johnson of the Johnson Brothers, he's playing bass on Quincy's version. And I got to meet Quincy. I went there with my manager one day, sunny day in Bel Air. When would that have been? Early 80s. And I know I get to meet him, and he says, "Hey Chaz," he says, "What sign are you?" I've been about 20. His wife had made a cup of tea, and I said, "Well, an Aries." Turns out he was a Scorpio, so we got that out of the way. And then he said, "What are you doing tomorrow night?" And I said, we looked at each other, my manager, myself, not a lot. He said, "Well, Michael's playing at the LA Forum. Do you want to go?" And we went, yeah. So we went to see Michael Jackson at the LA Forum, 90,000 people plus us. And right behind me, who's sitting right behind my hero, a Sly Stone. Just I don't know. We must have been in the guest area, and so I had to sort of like keep doing that, so I didn't look like a stalker.
Did you not say anything to him, no?
uh,
Did you say anything to him?
no, I didn't. I didn't. I just eyes straight ahead. And I think, the one time I looked at him, he was like I think he was thinking, who's this guy stealing my throne? That was what that's my stuff. Because he basically put soul and funk on the map. There's
Yeah,
no doubt
yeah.
about it. I think James Brown picked up on it, and a lot of artists. A great band called Mandrill. They and other people, Eddie Kendricks, Marvin Gaye. My God, so many artists. I think, and also it was multiracial. Sly Stone, his band was mixed race. But anyway, so I watched the gig, and it was fantastic. There was a brilliant special effect in the middle of it where it looked like Michael had disappeared at one point, but then he pops up on the other side of the stage. It was great. That was a really nice, and so thanks Quincy for that one. That was really nice,
Yeah.
and yeah. And why I also so grateful is because he's such a brilliant musician. I mean, he's worked with so many different people, and stretching back to people like Billie Holiday and Sarah Vaughan. Oh my God! And then he can do all these fantastic orchestrations and film music. He did a fantastic score for The Pawnbroker, which that was a great movie. Where Rod Steiger was in it. He did The Color Purple, that series. I mean, but then he could make outrageously up to the minute, Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, like those sort of tracks, and Billie Jean, and then the tracks he did with the Johnson Brothers. I mean, he was very prolific, but always such a fantastic sound to my ears. He had a very good recording engineer called Bruce Swedian. It's like Sweden, but there's an I in the middle of it, so it's Swedian.
He'll have been at the top of his game then, really, Quincy Jones, when he covered that, won't he? On
Sorry.
he'll have been at the top of his game, Quincy Jones, when he covered your song.
Oh, well, you know, I think so. I think he was crafting this. They got a sound down, like very, a lot of space in it, a lot of air. And he always used the best musicians. I mean, like, yeah, yeah. So, an honor. I mean, I was honored, to be honest, and, I'll tell you another good thing about it for me was it meant from Ian's perspective, it meant that I wasn't only it wasn't, yeah, I was part of the gang. I was part of the gang, being a blockhead, etc. But I had a life outside of that. I could stand on my own 2 feet outside of, you know, blockhead gangland, so to speak.
Once you went back to the Blockheads, did that bring a new audience from America into the music hall?
Now and again, I get people coming up to me after a gig and say, "Oh, I love I Know Corrida," or I love the stuff. Glad to know you. Now and again, it doesn't happen every night, but I do get people come up and they've got my solo records. Will you sign this? They'll say, "Will you sign this?" And so yeah, to the cognoscenti, the ones who know, yeah, they know I wrote I Know Corrida. They Yeah, I think you've got two levels of fans, haven't you? You've got fans who probably into everything, and they don't necessarily dig that deep. And then you got other people who they want to dig deeper and they find out about the individual histories of the musicians in the band. They do go a lot deeper. And maybe it's those people who've found out that I wrote I Know Corrida, and yeah, yeah.
You mentioned that I Know Creed was 8 minutes long.
Mm.
You had songs like Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll and Spasticus, Autisticus, banned from like the BBC and stuff. Did that ever impact the band or anything?
Well, I think in a way it sort of made us a bit more of a rebel group. Um, yeah, as I pointed out earlier, I don't think Ian ever intended to be a rock star. Ian Dury, like in a way, he just did it for the spirit of it. He loved it. I think it just so happened that he was in the right place at the right time. I was in the right place. Like the late 70s, um, you could really do your own thing and be successful at it. I'm not. I think it's always easier if you're in a band to do that than if you're a solo artist. A lot of time I've noticed solo artists just don't have this protection or the security of a band, and often they can lose their way. I mean, I think you hear it a lot of the time how individual members' careers don't take off. I mean, I was watching this documentary about Boyzone last night, and when they went off and did their own careers, solo thing, it didn't have the impact of the band, as a band. And I think that's, you know, um, is often the case. It's quite hard to stay on course and to be really true to what you want. If you're a so-called solo act, you know, some people manage to do it, to make a career out of it. But now there was never a conflict. My thing, doing my own thing. If in fact, if anything, I haven't promoted that as much as I have, by any means, as being a blockhead. I've sort of, I don't know why. Could be a bit of nervousness about standing up, singing all that, my back catalogue, but it might happen, you know.
That you did it on your own and you were known in America and stuff. Does that fill you with pride?
Yeah. Well, it's always good, isn't it? Like if someone says, enjoys what you've done, and acknowledges it makes you feel good, you know. Because a lot of time I'm woodshedding. I'm in my room. The amount of material I've got that's never seen the light of day compared with those little nuggets that have actually, allow me to have butter instead of margarine. Like you know.
Well,
um,
oh, no, sorry, what was you saying?
no, I mean, so that's what I'm trying to say is that, yeah, you put a lot of time into it. So yeah, I'm so grateful for those moments.
Last year, you released your album Mostly with Drive with Michael Messer. How
Yeah.
did that come about?
I'd known Michael for many years. We'd lost touch. He was a hairdresser when I first met him. He wasn't playing music. That's how long we're going back because he's been playing music for 40 years. So I knew him in my 20s, socially. I'd met him. Um, and then somehow we just kind of, during lockdown, we sort of hooked up. And he brought over his resonator guitar. Have you heard the album? Did you listen to it at
Yeah,
all?
it's got like a country blues feel to it, hasn't it? Like
Yeah.
a good album, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so I mean, I suppose if anything, my guitar style, does lend very much towards the blues country vibe, and so it fitted in with what Michael, here's what he was doing, but I did modify it slightly towards his taste because I knew he'd be writing, he was going to sing it, and he was going to be, yeah. And so we discussed a lot of the subject matter of the lyrics. But then he wrote them. He actually ended up writing the lyrics. And so I've been out. We've done a few gigs. We've got quite a few gigs coming up. They're all on his website, michaelmesser.com. All the gigs for the rest, for the time being, are up there. And yeah, it's a great outlet. It's a different kind of presentation from what I do with the Blockheads, obviously. Yeah, it's very enjoyable.
So you mentioned you've got some gigs there. You've got some gigs with the Blockheads as well.
Yeah, they're all the blockheadslive.com. All our gigs are on online at the blockheadslive.com. Just dial that, write that in, and you'll see all our gigs for the rest of the year. We're playing a lot all over the country. Yeah.
What's life like now these days? You've got them projects. Are you still writing for solo stuff as well?
Yeah. Well, look, I'll tell you what it is. You see, I on my phone, I've got a ton of little musical sketches that I put onto my voice recorder. Like as an idea comes, I could just fumble or make a mistake and oh, what was that? Oh, quite like that. And I'll press, record and I'll just get a snippet. It doesn't matter the quality. It doesn't matter if it's rubbish. I'll record it. Equally, I might record some birds, in the sky, or I might record some sound that catches my ear. I might be knocking a rhythm out on the bathroom sink. So all these little things are there, waiting, saying, "Please look at me, listen to me." And now and again, I'll go, "Oh yeah, maybe I can expand upon that." And so there's always something. Ethan, I've never been bored for a second because there's always something for me to explore, really. So I've got all my sketches on my phone, and at the same time, I could go in there thinking, right, I'm going to open my phone, but just before I do that, I'm just going to sit at the piano, and then I'll sit and go, oh, what was that? So now I've got, all right, I better record that, and that's it. That's what's happening. It's a kind of continuous roller coaster in that way.
Do you wish
Yeah.
you had that back in the 70s and 80s? I bet you forgot a lot of things you did back then, didn't you?
Oh my God, you're absolutely right. So what you do, you get an idea, you sort of got 2 hour drive home and you're sort of humming something, or you hear, oh, and you have to try and remember it for 2 hours. And I've often thought to myself, I bet it's nothing like the original. I mean, we're very fortunate, I think, to be born in the time we are with the technical technology we have. I mean, look at
Yeah,
us talking right now. Like incredible, isn't it?
yeah, it is crazy when you think about it. Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
and I think that's obviously affects how we live. Obviously, it's hand in hand with that. And no, you're absolutely right. It's a wonderful, wonderful invention. I mean, coming back to the album I made with Michael Messer, because of lockdown, I was sending him a lot. Of the album was done through us sending files backwards and forwards to each other, even though I had a little studio at the bottom of my garden during that time. I would put parts down that after he'd left, and I'd send them to him, and he'd go, "Oh, I like that," or "I don't like that." So and actually, there's a young lady called Isabella Coolstock. I made a whole album the same way with. I mean, she was doing her vocals down at her end, like um, in the south of London, and she'd send them back to me as a WAV file, and we put put an album together like that. The album's never been released, but it is possible to write that way. Just in the
Yeah.
same way that we're not physically in the same space, but we're still communicating.
Do you think you'd have wrote more songs like with Ian Dury and other co-writers back in the day than if you could have done it like this?
Wow.
Because you're meeting up,
Uh,
aren't you, when you both like you've got to be in the same room really to co-write back then, haven't you?
I still think I agree with you. I still think we could have done it like this, but there's something about being in a room with somebody that you can't beat that
Yeah.
ultimately. And I'm thank God for that. I think that everyone has all these fears about AI, but and I think they're legitimate sometimes because it's so depersonalized. Um, and But there is something wonderful about being in a room with somebody, and you hear, you have a laugh, and there's you can spend more time. There isn't a clock going. I mean, even now we've got a sort of a time limit, haven't we? Presumably, or I don't know.
I can talk for as long as you want. I could
Well,
talk for
that's
you
great. Well, that's
hours.
interesting because usually I thought there was a time limit. If I'm doing an interview, I'll see someone say, "Well, look, we better wrap this one up now. you know.
Oh, I think if you don't pay for the Zoom subscription, you get like 40 minutes or something.
Oh, right.
But I enjoy speaking to musicians and like you've given me the time as well, and I'm always intrigued how songs come about and songwriting. That's something I'm.
You're not a musician then?
No, no, I'm just a fan of music. I can't play it. I wish I could. I wish I could play an instrument. It must be a good thing to do.
You know, it's never too late. It's quite nice, you know, like get yourself a guitar and get somebody to show you a few chords. It's quite nice. It's a very well, not quite. It can become a full-time thing. And it's just I don't know. It is yeah. It's you become it becomes like a friend. It'll only put out what you put into it. It never answers back. It sits there. I always find that amazing, you know, like they just sit there patiently waiting, you know, instruments.
Do you play every day then, or just as often as you can? Or...
Yeah, you know, like I have played every day. I mean, to be honest, of late there has been a day or two when I haven't played a piano or guitar. Um, but I do like to play. I love to play. I mean, you know, but there might be the odd day when I don't. Um, but it's always a pleasure when I get back to it.
Do
And
you think?
I'm still sort of like, sorry, Ethan. I'm still in awe of it all, really. I still have like, there's something kind of mysterious that I don't quite know about, really. That I,
Yeah.
mm, yeah.
Do you think having a break, say a day or two, and then going back to it helps creatively, or do you think you need to do it every day for something to come to you?
I think you're right. I think it really does help. You know, um, it does, but it doesn't help if you leave it for too long,
Yeah.
because then you start forgetting stuff that you actually already knew. So now you're going back almost. It feels like sometimes if you don't practice your craft, it'll be like a tennis player. I mean, funny enough, I mentioned that because what I've noticed late, you know, when I'm playing guitar now, rhythm guitar on stage with the Blockheads, or like, it feels almost like I'm bouncing a ball rather than I'm more aware sometimes of just the physical act rather than the sound I'm making of guitar.
Yeah.
So, you know, and if you look at when people are dancing, they're bouncing, aren't they? They're bouncing, a bit like they could be in an athletic team, or you know what I mean? So there's a very physical side to rhythm, to you, well, obviously, and music, particularly when you've got a crowd there, because you tend to play your more up tempo pieces. When you play like um um you know a ballad or something which is much slower, well then you're going into a different energy, you know, and which we can also share. I think that's more akin to you know, just looking out at the back garden or looking out at nature. There is that relationship as well, and I've noticed people in the audience. I think they're being activated on so many different levels, you know. But as I say, you know, as we said earlier, you don't want to hear the same thing all over and over again. So we'll go from, you know, a hard edged kind of punky driven tune into something which is not that. But yeah, I suppose. Look, I'm 72 now, and time seems to be going very quickly. I don't know if it's my imagination. Is a minute shorter now than it was when I was younger? It could
What
be.
What is it like life in the Blockheads now? Obviously, you've had Ian died. Your other what was your other singer called? Sorry,
Oh, Derek Hussey.
Derek. Yeah. So you've had.
Derek the Draw. Derek the Draw. Oh, yeah. So I haven't mentioned Derek. Yeah, what a great, phenomenal person he is. Yeah.
So what's it like these days? Obviously, after
Oh,
last
bloody hell. Well, we've got a singer called Mike Bennett, and he's very theatrical. He's not like Derek. Derek was, you know, like, obviously had his own skill and had a very, his own energy and really clever lyrics and very witty, actually. I was just going to try and think of a couple of tunes that Sorry, I Apologize. That was a song that we recorded, but the fans of the Blockheads should definitely have. might know it, and people who haven't listened to it, sorry, I apologize. Don't Get Out the Car. These were songs that Derek wrote the lyrics for, and sang. But these days, well, Derek passed away in 2020. These days we've got Mike Bennett who's singing. Now he lives in Manchester, just down the road from you, sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's great. He's a real character, real character. And we've just recorded our first. Well, we're going to put out a single pretty soon, and he's written and is singing both of them. So we've done probably about 70 gigs with him now. He's very strong. Well, come and see a gig because it's very engaging. Yeah.
Yeah, it
And
sounds
he's
brilliant.
got more jewelry on than, I don't know, than a jewelry store. He's got
Fifty
rings everywhere.
two.
He's got chains. He's got his hair's dyed. He's got Blockhead logos all over him. He's sort of like, you know, he's the opposite to Derek in as much as he's very theatrical. Derek didn't do that. Um, Derek had a great image, and was a great singer for us, and deliverer of lyrics. Mike's different. He comes from a theatrical background. He writes a lot of audio books,
All right, yeah, yeah.
and does presents them, and yeah. So because of his background in theatre, he's exactly that. And a lot of people have said to us, "Wow, in fact, people, this is funny, who haven't really been following the story, haven't been paying attention. They'll come up to him and go, 'Hi, Ian, how's it going? How's it going, mate?' And he goes, 'Oh, I'm fine, thanks.' And he pretends he's Ian, even though Ian passed away 20 years ago. But from a distance, I suppose he does look a bit like Ian."
With yourself, you mentioned we mentioned that you did the album last year. You did
Mm,
your own album the year before,
mm.
but before that, it was mainly singles and stuff. Were you ever
Yeah,
going back to albums?
yeah. I did. I don't know if you saw an album I put out a little while ago called Flow.
Yeah, in 2023. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So and I promoted one single on that called Bodies Without a Soul. And
yeah, yeah.
yeah, that did quite well in Bath actually on the radio. Is it called what was it called? Um Not Liberty, what was it called? Anyway, people I'd like if they want to check out some of my recent material, I think that's one of my finer works, my better work, Bodies Without a Soul, um, or Deep Water. That's quite an interesting tune on my album because it's quite jazzed out. Also, I'm really into sort of like Afro kind of beats. I love sort of rhythms from um, South America because that was always a love of mine was Brazilian music, and I really take to those sort of rhythms. So often that will be I think you might hear that in certain of my tunes, really. Possibly, yeah. But I would like to go back and well, I kind of feel the urge to make some more funky music, to make some pretty soulful beats. Yeah, I've done a little thing with a guy, a very very good sax player, jazz sax player, stroke flautist, flute player called Finn Peters, and I've just done 3 tunes with him. That's going to come out later. See, my records I put out through Kudos Records, Kudos, Kudos. They're a distribution company, and so I put my stuff out through CJ Records through their distribution. That's what I did with Flow. That's what I did with a lot of my singles, and that's what I'm going to do with Finn Peters.
Well, it's
It's
brilliant.
quite nice. It's quite nice doing that because then, for example, I mean, as with D.O.A that we've been talking about, I'm putting it out, distributing it through Kudos, but I'm just hiring my own PR company, which is how, like we got in touch as it so happens,
Yeah,
through
yeah.
Mike at Lisa Davis, who are doing a fantastic job, by the way. Really great. If ever you need a good PR company, they're fantastic. And I like the way that works. It's like, Yeah. So you get it up online, you do your best there, and then you hire professionals who can, find other ways of spreading the word, you know, because to be totally frank, I'm good. I might be skilled at making music to an extent, but my PR skills are hopeless. You know, I mean, yeah. So I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that it can work like this.
He is brilliant, Mike. He has contacted me a few times with like people like yourself to interview and stuff, and it's great to when he does email.
Yeah, he's very efficient, isn't he? Very kind of like just gets on with it. Like yeah,
Yeah,
you feel you're in good hands. That's what it is.
yeah, brilliant. And it's brilliant that you're still keeping yourself busy with different music ventures and stuff. That's great to hear.
Thank you, Ethan. You look like a superhero in that top. Well, I didn't imagine you about to fly off into like into another.
I never thought of that really. Yeah, I can see it actually.
You see it.
Yeah. Um, is there any links you'd like me to leave below for people to check out or anything?
Well, there's chazjankel.com, michaelmesser.com. I have a YouTube channel. I have a Chaz Jankel, YouTube. My Instagram is Chaz Jankel 2018, numbers 2018. Trying to think what else is there. What about Spotify?
All right, yeah, yeah.
All my music's generally a lot of it's on Spotify. I like it because it's like, I thought Joe Rogan, like Joe Rogan's. Do you ever watch Joe Rogan?
Yeah, his podcast massive, isn't it?
Isn't it? He covers everything in it, doesn't he? And they, like they go on for a while, don't they? And he doesn't cut anything short.
No, I like that though. I like hearing the stories, like the time you've given me today. I really do appreciate it, and we have had a good
Thank
chat.
you. Well, likewise. Look, it's fantastic for me, and as I said, we're so lucky to have this means of communication.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Um, in this world where it takes so long to get anywhere now on the road, doesn't it? Like with traffic,
trains and
I mean,
everything.
I've often said the best way to travel is in your mind. You can go wherever you want, when you want, and you don't need a passport.
What is some of the favorite countries that you've played?
Wow. Um, hmm. I like playing. Where did I like playing? Well, Japan was weird. I mean, I only went there for a week, but it's like this. It's the most unusual country on the planet. I mean, you know, um, they start their gigs really early, like about 7 o'clock, and they're over by about 8:30. And when people clap there, they sort of like they're clapping away, and it stops, and there's not one dribble of a clap after it. It's like they're all. I think how do they do that? It's like watching starlings all fly off in the same direction. Um, but they eat their sushi at room temperature, which is I do prefer mine a little bit colder. So, there's different habits going on. Great though, lovely audiences. So where else did I like playing? Oh, it's a tough one to say because audiences are great wherever you play.
Yeah, yeah.
If they're into it.
Like,
And then one last thing, Ethan, we don't get to play a lot outside the country. Um, you know, because of the style of the lyrics and so forth, I think they're quite English.
yeah,
So
that's what I was going to ask. Is there a country that gets it that you didn't think would get it, or is it no?
no, I don't think so much. Australia, but I never went there. They
Oh,
loved a little bit. They love a bit of Ian Dury and the Blockheads, but no,
it's the accent he sings in as well, isn't it? Like that Cockney accent.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Eat me with your rhythm stick. I can't do
yeah.
that. I sounded like a sort of like, oh, I won't do it because usually my accents are quite good, but I'm not going to test them out here now. Yeah, well, I love wherever I get the opportunity to play. I love it. No, but it's not that easy for us as a seven-piece band, the Blockheads. We've got two road crew. That's a lot of beds. That's a lot of flights. That's a lot of meals. So that's why we don't get to travel outside of this country a lot. You know, that's why we tend to play the UK. I'd love to play outside, but it's complicated. Well, it's expensive. You see,
You get people coming
promoted.
over for the gig, though.
Sorry?
You get people coming over for the gigs from.
Yeah. Funny you should say that. If I can show you, this bloke came over the other night. We were playing in Southampton, and he travelled all the way from Canada. And
Jesus.
there he is. Look, there he is.
Oh yeah.
And,
Oh
yeah, look,
yeah,
and look at his t-shirt. His wife had found this t-shirt for him. He'd flown over from Canada. I thought that's really nice, isn't it? So yeah, we
yeah.
do get people coming in. Yeah,
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, yeah.
I love that. I love that. And as I said, you'll get three generations of blockheads. You'll see granddad standing there in his flat cap. Then you'll see his son in his black bomber jacket. And then you'll see little tots, little blockheads, with little t-shirts that they've got the merch stand. Yeah, really nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
nice. It's nice that that's still continuing, and um, to know that we're part of the culture. Really.
Yeah, not many bands have that longevity, really, do they?
No, I heard somebody say that to me the other day. They actually said, "Well done." Um, excuse me for managing to stay afloat after your lead singer had passed.
Yeah.
And I know you're absolutely right. Um, maybe Ian when he named it Ian doing the Blockheads. He was thinking ahead like that, thinking, well, one day if I hang up my clugs, they'll be a self-contained unit. The Blockheads will they'll be able to stand alone. And I mean, I tell you what, the support we get from the audience is fantastic. I mean, honestly, they seem to love what we do, and it's hard for me to be objective because I'm part of it. But I think it's a lot to do with the fact that they've grown up. It's been a soundtrack, you know what it's like. If you hear a tune somewhere, you might be somewhere, and a piece of music sticks in your mind. So whenever you go to that place, you think you hear that piece of music.
That's
You know,
like Hit Me With Your Rhythm Stick. Everybody really, they might not know it's Ian Dury the Blockheads, but they know that song. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, that's true. And it's like that. So maybe those associations are what keep the spirit of what we're doing alive, because they certainly know reasons to be cheerful. They're going one, two, three. They can't get enough of that. I think we all like a bit of a charm at the end of the day. I think it sort of appeals to our tribal ancestry, whatever we
What
used to chant back then.
was it hard to continue? Was it hard the decision to continue when he died?
Um, I tell you what, funny enough, what I wanted to call it Plan B. I wanted to call it Plan B. Um, it so happens it's what's his name that
Yeah, there's something called Plan B. That rapper,
yeah, yeah, he
R&B,
pitched it.
yeah,
Yeah, so
Plan
that wouldn't have gone down. And I'm glad it didn't happen, because people thought, well, who are they? No, we were right to keep it the Blockheads. I don't think so, because a musician needs to keep working. That's how he earns his bread and butter. So what it was, I mean, Phil Jupiters sang with us for a while, but we were stuck until we actually, but he was just filling in really, although he's a great, great fan of Ian's lyrics. Um, um, it was only when we got Derek on board that we sort of had a way forward, Derek the Draw. Um, yeah, that is quite a difficult slot to be the singer in the Blockheads, because
yeah,
Ian was so individual, um, so unique. But I think, for example, Mike Bennett, who's singing with us now, he really admires Ian's lyrics so much, but he's his own man as well. He's his
yeah,
own.
yeah.
He's not trying to be Ian. And if I ever spot that he's not being himself, I will mention it to him. You know, if it becomes a caricature, you don't want that.
Yeah, no, no.
You know.
Like you said before, that person said it's some credit to continue without him, and because not many bands, if they lost the singer, that's it usually, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't know how's Queen getting on now. I mean,
Was
other
it Adam
places,
Lambert or something they had before?
huh?
Adam Lambert, didn't he come in and do the vocals? I'm not sure how. I've never seen them. Have you?
No, no, I
No.
haven't seen it. But I mean, I hear your point, and it's a very good point. But the gigs we play, most of the places we play, when I look at the posters, they're tribute acts. There's very few bands like from our era still out there playing. Very few, and if they have, there's not one original member.
Yeah.
And this is a good point. Um, and I know people who even play in bands who are playing in pubs and so forth. If they want to play their own material, they have a hard time because audiences prefer to hear songs they know, right? Someone told me that the other night. Was he a semi-pro musician? I can't remember. Yeah, he was in a band, um, um, and they do covers. But if they try and put their own material in, the audience, it's like it's that vibe, you know. So
It
then
is,
they quickly go back to a hit.
it is tough for a band that have such longevity in it because, like you said, people do want to hear the hits, but I'm guessing as a band you want to bring in the new material as well.
Big time. I mean, I sometimes feel like, what does Paul McCartney do? I mean, he's got about, he could play hits for hours.
Yeah.
So how does he slip a new one in there? I think you just have to accept the fact that the audience do want to hear something a bit different. I think. I mean,
Yeah.
you're never going to be able to play a song like the record anyway live. I mean, you've got huge dynamics, volume wise, playing live that you'll never have on a record. It's much more compression and stuff involved with the record. So I think it's a time to stretch out live, and also to remember that the audience, they want to enjoy it. I mean, they're not there to, I think, to be critical like a critic for a film, or they're not. They've paid their money. I think number one is they want to enjoy themselves. They've probably had a bevy, and they're all loosened out, ready to go. And there they stand, in their little spot on the floor, with about probably 6 inches of space around them, and that's it. That's where they're going to stand and hear the music.
Is there a
Um,
favourite gig that stands out to you over the years?
it's a good question. I'm trying to think of one. We did 7 nights at Hammersmith Odeon. That was an amazing experience. Um, I mean, just the vibe really was fantastic. But that's going back to the late 70s. I mean, I'm talking now, I don't know what to say, Ethan. I mean, I love each gig has its own character, to be
Yeah,
honest.
unique.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I remember, I can't remember, it was 2 gigs ago. Like I seem to remember saying to the band that was the best gig we've played in a long time, but I can't remember where it was. Yeah. Who knows? I've often noticed if you play 3 gigs in a row, the first one, if you haven't played, say you haven't played for 2 months, you've got 3 gigs in a row coming up. The first gig is fantastic because like you're all fived up. Then the second gig, the one after that, isn't, because you're trying to now remember how did it go last night? It was so good last night. Now you're trying to catch up with that. And then the third gig, you're also a bit demoralized. So you might as well not have bothered. Although now and again you might get, oh, okay, yeah, right. But the point what I wanted to make was each audience, that's their time for seeing the gig. So you can't afford to be complacent. You've got to live in the present, because that's, say they're in Southampton. Well, they're not, that's it. They paid their money, they've seen you. They want to hear you at your best. They don't want to hear that the gig you played the night before was much better. You know what I mean? That's the last thing you want to hear. Oh, they were brilliant the other night. I'm not sure about tonight. Nobody wants to spread those vibes. But we honestly, we keep it 100%. We never when I think that's what has held the band together. Actually, is is that love of just being in the present, seeing what happens. You know, just seeing what electricity is going to occur in the present.
Yeah, it's magic, really, isn't it?
Huh?
Music. It's magic music,
Well,
really.
it is. It's phenomenal, and I had no idea. And you asked me a question earlier about when did I know I was going to be a professional musician? Well, I kind of fell into it. I just was playing music from an early age. I had no idea, obviously, that you could survive, you could earn a living when I was, in my teens. I had no idea really, but it comes back to my parents. I was so grateful. They gave me a support system to allow me to sort of in a way blunder around, really kind of find my feet
Yeah,
as a musician. And I feel for a lot of young people who don't have that, because I think it's tougher and tougher, particularly with the cost of living now. I think you're going to find fewer and fewer bands in London. I think they're all, the cost of living is so huge. I'm talking about rehearsal rooms and, pubs to play. There's much fewer venues now. The landscape's changed, Ethan, really, but the love of music hasn't. Um, I think through streaming you get much less royalties. So what's happened there is, where possible, bands are playing out live, so it's great for the consumer in a way. Um,
yeah,
they get to see a lot more live music. I think jazz also is going to influence a lot of music, because you can go to a pub and hear phenomenally good music, very very high standard, and pay and sometimes it's a fiver to get in, or you just buy a beer and there's no entrance fee and you'll hear phenomenal music. And I think that kind of rubs off on people when they're young. I think young people don't want to be part of the herd. They want to be. I remember how I was. You don't want to be conventional. That's why you grow your hair long, or do things that you don't want to be part of the herd. You want to do your own thing. And
that's where the best music genres come from. It like punk, for
yeah,
example, that came out of wanting to be different and being something.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was absolutely. And maybe rap came out of a desire just to state your point, to
Yeah,
make, I'm over here, this is what I have something to say. um there's so many areas you can explore. um I think when you get tired, and you keep playing the same piece of music because you're trying to develop it, that you can get demoralized if you're like that. But if you stand back and look at how lucky you are, to be a musician. Um, that's when things happen. Is when you don't beat yourself up about it. If you just kind of like flow with it. Sorry,
yeah.
little
Is that
plug.
is that what you do then? Just let the music take you when you're writing it, see where it goes.
Yeah, yeah. I'm most a lot of what I do is initiated outside of the studio, not in the studio. It'll be, as I say, I could I could find a beat, that I like, like I tap it out. Um, or I might wake up from a dream and I'm dreaming something, and I might hum those notes onto my little machine. Whether I pick up on it later, get them off my phone, is yet to be seen. But at least it's there. At least it's there if I if I need to reference it. Or yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing any future music that's coming out.
Thank you, Ethan. Yeah, it's really nice. Yeah, I've got some ideas. I feel really optimistic actually at the moment. Yeah, really good.
Like we said, you had a long, successful career. How do you keep inspired these days to write new stuff? It's just what you've
Um,
always done, kind of thing.
what was I? Um, I think I think it's just down to looking on the bright side of life. I think so. I think that's the way to do it. Is just to recognize that you've got a gift. You know, just like the sky, the light in your life. I mean, like, you know, like just the opportunity, the potential is there every day. What you do with it is up to you. I mean, do you do this all the time, or do you have another job that you
Mainly this, yeah, mainly this.
so you can live off this? So that's great. You know, it's enough income coming from what you're doing to sort of
Is that how you see like music? It's not a job. Like you don't see it as a job.
no,
That's
no.
a good thing then.
I think that's it's always been. It's I think played for. It's a play. You know, we play music. No,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I think I do. I do see it like that. But having said that, you have a responsibility. You can't just stay in bed midday. Well, you could do. Like I think you have to be a bit more recognize that there is discipline involved. There is a discipline involved, and you don't want to just be stick playing the same thing over and over again. That is when I would say that's not responsible. I think you should be more responsible than that because I think you're given a gift here, musicians as in anybody, and I think the idea is to tie it in with a meaning, like for the universe. So you're not just separate from it; you're actually part of it. So I think you've got to do something that's meaningful and positive and helpful for others. And I
yeah.
think that's the reason probably why it appealed music in the first place. I mean, I think all you're doing if you play music in a way is you're receptive to the frequencies, isn't it? And the vibes, the waves that you're putting out. You play a chord on a piano or something, you're receiving, you go, oh, that sounds nice. And in a way, you're bottling it in a way for somebody else who doesn't play music. You're allowing them to an access to that because you say, right, I'll play that chord, and later on, maybe in a year's time, you're playing that chord on a stage behind a vocal or not, and that is so we're purveyors. We're kind of sharing these frequencies. I mean, often I have people looking at me if I'm playing guitar in the audience, and the moment we make eye contact, they switch to the lead singer because I'm like this bloke that does something they don't really understand, and they're happier looking at the person singing because they're words that like they can interpret. They're more accessible, but the music is almost like a little transport system that gets them to that. But at the same time, I don't think they quite know what it is. And so they're more comfortable. They'll look at you when you're not looking at them, but the moment you look at them, they sort of like they look off, they look off towards the singer, which is more sensible to look at that than to be looking at a person who's playing guitar and they don't really know why they're looking at him.
It's like, yeah, like say 'cause they're singing, but when you're just too, it's just like it might be a bit. Oh, I know what you mean. I've done it as a fan of when you're looking at like a guitarist or bass player, and you like, it's just an awkward stare between each other, and
It is, isn't it? I'll tell you what's annoying also is if you're looking at somebody and they're filming on your camera and they've got the torch on and you can't, yeah, it's like looking into somebody doesn't dip their headlamps, it's really painful. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it's been brilliant. I could talk to you for hours and hours. It's
Thanks,
been
Ethan. That was
brilliant.
fun, wasn't it? We've gone to some good places there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.